welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Bud Elliott. That's Tom Fornelli. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 Tailgate, where, we'll start a little bit, in college sports, but Thomas jumped in. And he didn't bring the good vibes. He brought the sad vibes. He said, pour one out for the Knoll boys and Chip's Tar Heels. Yes, the Atlantic Coast Conference had 5 teams make it to the Super Regionals. Louisville, Miami meant that at least one was going to get knocked out. But North Carolina blows a strong start to its series with Arizona, including 2 late blown leads and the losses in game 2 and 3. FSU was up way late, but I don't know if you were keeping track of it, but playing out at Oregon State had a little bit past my bedtime, but how things go for the Noles?
I had planned to stay up real late for this, and they gave up a literal touchdown in the first inning, and I was like, all right, I'm going to hang around just to make sure. Battled back to cut it to 3, and then Oregon State scored a couple more, so it's like, all right, I'm good.
Yeah,
this is toast. So
honestly,
losing game 1 was the real issue. You can't walk the guy hitting 210 to put an extra dude on base. Like you got to throw some strikes, let him hit it. If he hits it, he hits it. Whatever. Like you're still, his run doesn't really matter. You're up 3, so that walk kind of screwed him, and they just kind of got the ball rolling. So they lose. Sucks.
Tom, no.
Giants swept the Braves this weekend, so it was a terrible day for a lot of college baseball fans.
The Rays are hot too.
Some comeback win, right?
Yeah, walk off on Saturday.
Walk off on Saturday night.
Walk off on Friday. Yeah, that's how the Giants do it, baby. 32 home games, 8 walk-off wins.
The college baseball, the chaos of college baseball always stands out to me. A couple things. Like number one, our friend Parker Stats War on Twitter. He's got the great meme of from American Psycho, Christian Bale doing the very nice, and he says, "But let's see the bullpens." Just because any college baseball game, by the time you go to your bullpen, things could go, like literal 7, 8, 9 run innings are possible when you get into the bullpens. And then just the idea that it is one of the hardest tournaments to win the way it is set up in terms of the best teams are not always going to be able to make it to Omaha. So we'll see. Yeah. Tough one for the Tar Heels and the Noles, but yeah, pretty entertaining college baseball tournament so far. So we got a lot to get into here today. So there is for the House settlement, which has now gone through and has now been approved. There are a couple of levels to this that I want to be able to hit. I got sort of 3 big questions. I've got 6 bullet points I want to make sure we hit. We've also got some very, very crucial news for a Big Ten title hopeful that broke late last week. And now we're starting to learn a little bit more and so much more. So we will get started with a big old edition of Billable Hours. And speaking of Billable Hours, let's get it started here. Bud Elliott, what in the world are you doing on the Cover 3 podcast? Because according to our friend John Talty, Kessler and Berman are expected to receive $484 million in their work of bringing the House settlement to completion. I guess that's where I want to say is how much of this is a true turning point and how much of this is a gateway to more litigation, more lawsuits, and then we'll start to get into why we might get there if that is the case.
It's not a bad question. It's just a question that I'm struggling to answer here on the fly because it is absolutely a big deal. It is a turning point that they actually got this done. It does kind of, codify some of the rules of this, college sports going forward. But yet, I think we're going to have a lot of litigation coming from this. We're going to have Title IX litigation. We're going to have potential equal pay litigation that I'm sure is going to be filed. We're also going to have litigation on the other side. Like I'm sure you'll have football players challenging and saying, "Hey, we should have more of the pie. Like what we're being paid is actually not fully representative of what we bring in, for the season, right? Or for our schools." You're going to have a whole lot of litigation as far as this NIL deal clearinghouse, especially because you already have so many precedents, being filed and saying, "Hey, we already know what these guys are actually worth on the open market. Now you're putting this sort of artificial cap on these players who are not employees, which is probably eventually where we will go. You have all the private equity implications. I think it's a unique time for college sports. If you are a frequent listener of this show, this isn't really like newsy to you because we've talked about this for 18 months now.
Forever,
it's been a drip. And that's why I think that, like, especially on June 9th, it's a good opportunity for, if you've only been getting the drips and not been paying attention, let's distill this down into like the one little piece that can help you understand exactly what's happening here.
Sure. So we now have revenue sharing directly with the players. So you don't have to use collectives. Collectives will still be around. They will still facilitate deals, et cetera. So this year it's 20-ish million. I think about 17 of that is going to go, to the major revenue sports, at least from what I've been reading in most cases. Obviously, Big East basketball was different because like a lot of those schools don't actually have football, or at least not big time football. So they'll be spending a lot more on basketball. But I mean, that's still a pretty far cry from the number that some of the very top teams are spending. And yet I also think it draws a pretty clear line between your Power 5 teams, or your Power 4 now, I guess, and the G5 leagues where, okay, so you might take a school like a Texas or whomever, and you see all the reports out there, their payroll's 30 or their payroll's 40 or whatever. I mean, 17 is a pretty serious haircut to that, assuming you can't find other ways to get the guys the money, which they will, I would think. But on the other hand, 17 is also way, way more than everybody else, what everybody else is paying. I mean, I bet you 17 is more than the Sun Belt East or the Sun Belt West combined.
Whoa! Last season?
Yeah, as far as like what they actually pay out in NIL, like those guys don't have like a lot of real NIL.
Sure.
So I mean, you're talking about like some teams pay more in NIL than entire conferences have been. Now with the rev share, that's probably going to change. But the thing is, not all of those teams are going to opt in to pay the full amount every year, and nor should they. Like they're not really producing a product that people outside of their home region want to watch all that much. Like it's still nice and local and regional, which I think is kind of the core of college sports in many ways. I mean, the 84 Oklahoma decision that opens up everybody's TV markets and just floods money into the sport for the big boys changed a lot of things. But I mean, I think it does kind of help to sort of, whoa, like look at the gulf of spending here between the big boys and everybody else.
Yeah, I think the news on Friday was symbolic in that it's a big day in college sports, in that like it is now legal to pay players and the schools are doing it and they're opting in. But like Bud's been talking about, we've got a long way to go before any of this is truly settled and all the dust settles on what the actual future is going to look like, because I do think it's going to be the Wild West still for a few more years until until players unionize and become employees and there are actual contracts being signed that have actual legal merit and standing. I have no idea what any of this is going to look like, because like you talk about there's the 20.5 million that they have in revenue sharing that the schools opt into, that they are allowed to parse however they want. Okay, there'll probably be some oversight on that because the schools are the ones doing it. But as far as NIL, like Deloitte or whatever the heck they're going with is deciding what fair market value is. Like, how the hell do you decide what fair market value for anybody is? Like, this stuff is all still going to be a lot of shooting from the hip with the cash cannon. So we'll find out. I think teams are going to cheat, because anytime there's rules that somebody's going to want to break them. So that's, no matter what the system is going to look like, somebody's going to be cheating, and it's going to be interesting to see what the new College Sports Commission, that's what it's called, right?
It is called the College Sports Commission. Yes.
How much teeth does that actually have to enforce any of this? So yeah, get used to a lot of talk about this stuff for the next few years, I think, before any of this is really truly settled.
Okay, let's start there with it is either a clearinghouse powered by Deloitte, or it is a trendy new over-the-top app to be able to watch your favorite cable subscriptions. Its actual name is NIL Go. Okay, it is hard for me to take this seriously with a name like NIL Go. So
why didn't they just add a plus to it? NIL Plus would have been so much
great
better.
idea. Okay, NIL Go, NIL Plus. Go and find your favorite NILs in the wild. I was taken back to Pokemon Go as I was reading about this thing. So NIL Go Plus actually can work. Okay, follow me here. So anything more than $600 is now going to be any NIL deal more than $600 is now going to have to go through the NIL Go Plus clearinghouse. But in terms of deciding what fair market value is, this is going to provide a real advantage to schools with a lot of local business influence, which isn't that different from the old Renegade booster days. Now, all they are going to clear is the contracts. I do not believe, as of right now, that NIL Go Plus is going to be following up to make sure that every single defensive end and quarterback shows up for every single autograph signing down at Big Booster Cadillac GMC. So I think that what we've got here is a way that what we believe was always going to happen anyways could end up working out, because the fair market value that for a local star at a place where there's a lot of local business support can end up going through. So, like, am I saying it's great? We've got a system where no show appearances are the ways for us to be able to land. But what I do think is it means that the schools that were already going to be paying big money for NIL players will be able to, through NIL Go Plus, try to keep those things legitimate rather than just going right off the top, because enforcement on compensation, to your point, falls back under the College Sports Commission. So the NCAA is not going to be coming through, and the NCAA will not be doing impermissible benefits anymore. What it will be is it will be an enforcement of a violation of the NIL protocols according to the College Sports Commission. That is going to be incredibly messy. And if I'm a head coach, I ain't worried about that at all. We get the deals done that we need to get done. If you get slapped on the wrist, but 2 years down the line, then whatever. But I think that the NIL Go Plus clearinghouse, when we think about the schools that are going to be spending the most on NIL, there's a way to keep this more or less as intended.
I do think it is somewhat perfect for fans, though, in that when your team loses, you could just say the other school's cheating.
Right.
And it's still going to be very murky, and there's really going to be no way to prove it. So that still exists, which I think for fans is good.
So are you asking, like, what's to stop them from creating a bunch of new companies that need to get the word out about their business and just do like $1,600,000 deals?
Mm-hmm.
No. More than $600 deals. You got to write the contract that has $1.2 million worth of deliverables.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Right. You do run into some limits there. Like, $1.2 million worth of deliverables is a lot of deliverables for a kid who doesn't have a whole lot of name value.
Correct.
Like the player's roster value is
buddy, you are cleaning tires.
Yeah.
Will players be selling advertisements on their uniforms?
Not yet. But I mean, given the financial strain. So yeah, NIL Go Plus, I feel like I can see a way that this does end up working out. What's not going to be there, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think the idea that a bidding war in the transfer portal for an offensive tackle all of a sudden reaches $2.2 million, I think that's going to have to be an under the table situation.
I would agree. Yeah.
Do you guys think, like, could these rules possibly kind of put a cap on the market that way, though? Like you mentioned, Chip, a guy getting $2.2 million in the portal. Could we see this eventually lead to schools being able to pay the guys less than what they've been paying them so far when the bidding wars start?
Yes. I think what they've been paying them in this moment right now, before everything got approved and July 1 hits, including deals that are probably trying to get rushed and pushed through before everything gets put in place, then yes, I do think that we are going to see prices come down.
I do too in the interim, but I'm not sure it's going to be permanent.
And do you think that will lead to more problems in the future as far as like collective bargaining, free markets?
As far as like antitrust?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
How? Connect that dot for me.
So basically, I think you're going to say, hey, like we were making this, and now with these anti-competitive rules, we are now making much less, right? Now, a lot of this doesn't matter if they are able to push this antitrust exemption through, with the favorable Congress that you have right now. But if they don't, then eventually, I do think this could get blown up. So a lot of it rides on what happens with this Congress, and depending on what happens, like if you don't get it done this session or next session, what happens after the next election? Obviously, I don't know if you guys saw the news, but Sankey and a couple others are playing golf with the president. I think coming up, Dellinger reported it. So, we'll see what they're able to push through. But if you don't have, if you don't get the antitrust exemption, then a lot of the stuff that's anti-competitive is still open to be challenged.
The president golfs?
Listen, it was a real test of my my integrity. Just the thought of putting him in the thumbnail, just to be able to juice the views, because it'd be a stretch, right? But you're right. Notre Dame's athletic director and Greg Sankey golfing with the president when we're going to be leaning on the executive branch and the legislative branch to try and push through potential antitrust exemptions for the NCAA and college sports. Very relevant to this. That's like two of my overarching things here for fans to understand. Antitrust exemption for college sports, collective bargaining, and making them employees. Like, those are the big topics that this does nothing to really change right now. It does create the ability, as we've said, for schools to pay players directly without having to go through NIL. It has created an NIL environment where the boosters are not going to be expected to put together the whole payroll as they were before, but at the places where you compete for national championships, they still expect you to put forth about the same as you were before. It's just now the cost of everything has gone up. I got a couple more big bullet points to hit, and then we'll get into some actual football talk. I appreciate y'all rocking with us as we try to get through all of this new world order. Coming up on the other side, what does it mean for some of those schools outside of the Power Conference as we move forward in the House era? And what can we expect moving forward? All that and more next.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more.
It's Gareth Bale! Ronaldo! Wonderful goal!
On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. Some of you jumped in the tailgate. We were traveling a little bit, so we had to get this link up live. We appreciate Mikey and all of his hard work. So at 3:54 a.m. Eastern time, our friend Trey was in the tailgate, and this is what he was thinking about. He said, does any team with college football playoff aspirations limit themselves to, quote, true NIL, or do those teams keep paying as they have been with the $20.5 million effectively as a bonus?
Man, any team? I feel like the way this is worded, I'm going to say probably yes. Some team that has real aspirations might limit themselves to it for duration. I don't know. Maybe it's just a year. Maybe they just kind of, don't want to dip their toe in before everything is going. Man, I don't know. I don't think long term that they will. But the word any team kind of makes me want to say yes to this. And no, I don't really know which team that would be.
It's your team. Your team is doing it the right way. They're following
right.
all the rules.
It's
and
Michigan.
they're still overcoming all the cheaters and the bad guys.
Right. So that would be Michigan.
No, it's your team. Michigan's a cheater too, Chip. I don't know if you heard, but Michigan was the one dealing with the NCAA's board of whatchamacallits over the weekend. They had their hearing. I don't think you can say they didn't cheat.
No, listen, they are Michigan. Jim told me, okay? Jim told me we don't break rules. He didn't know about it, okay? That's a rogue actor right there. True NIL, again, at the in the NIL Go Plus clearinghouse, I could see them being able to
True NIL is like a reality show on NIL Plus.
So doesn't Alabama come to mind? Like, doesn't the idea that Alabama with, let's say, the estimations are, as you mentioned, about 17 or so are going to end up going to revenue sports. I've heard anywhere from 13 to 16 is sort of your floor for what's going to end up going to football. It's Alabama. Let's say it's 15 or 16. I think that they could cobble together more than $12 to $15 million with NIL deals that could probably still pass the clearinghouse.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So I think there are some teams I think there are some teams that are not necessarily going to have to go full bagman again, because there is an assumption that this is like bring back the bagman type era.
Think of it like kind of, I don't know if this is a great analogy, but like in the NBA, you have a salary cap. MLB, there's like a luxury tax line. So like there's a cap, but you can go past it as long as you're willing to pay the price for it. So some teams will be willing to pay the luxury tax, which would be anything plus the 20.5 million.
Yeah, I think if you look at this question, does any team have serious, like, does any team do anything aspirationally? Like, do they actually make a real run with only like a $17 million payroll, if that's what's going to football? Which I still think it's probably less than that, given that like football and basketball. I'm going to say no.
Gotcha. What about this one? Ringo. Hey guys, huge fans of the podcast since the days of just Bud and Chip. Any
that was my favorite era.
Tom was on vacation and Jenny was golfing.
Yeah.
Any speculation whether or not this will curb the transfer portal insanity, or are we too far down the line with that? The transfer portal impact is another one of my sort of big bullet points here. What's how do you feel about the transfer portal impact of the House settlement? It
doesn't bring more insanity. I'll tell you that. I think
because it's hard for us to get more insane than at 99.9. I
mean, but potentially like in concert with some other change, maybe a singular transfer portal window, which I don't know how they're going to get that to hold up legally, but I think that would be generally good for, and when I say good for the sport, I generally mean like good for the fans. I think that would be good for like the health of the sport as it relates to keeping people watching and associating players with their team. And I think that is something that's kind of true to college football. It's like, oh yeah, this guy's going through the program, even if he never really steps on campus, because a lot of these kids take online classes anyway. I know the Irish, y'all are different. Cool. But there is like a feeling I think you want to have, hey, this player, we've watched him grow up on our team. I do think like this could hurt the transfer portal a little bit because there's just a little bit less money to go around in theory. Like everybody kind of knows generally what everybody else has. And so it might, if you are negotiating on behalf of a team, you might be a little bit quicker to say, we're actually not going to make this alleged, or we're not going to meet this alleged offer that you are presenting us from this other team because we think it's bunk. So pound sand or sign what we gave you if you want to. So I think it could help slow down the transfer portal a little bit, but antitrust exemption would help a whole lot if you get it. Employee status obviously would kill it. There are some things, but this is potentially like a very, very first like initiator step.
Yeah, I would just think that the transfer portal will be largely the same as it has been. Although, like we saw this year, there might be fewer big names in it just because programs are going to probably do a better job of retaining them in the revenue sharing. But you'd still see some big names go just based on some teams maybe having more room in their cap available for a big name star. But I don't think you're really going to see the transfer portal, quote unquote, calm down until these players are signing actual contracts.
Yeah.
Good point. Like multi-year contracts or just
like you've signed a 3-year deal. You're here. And then we're going to pay you for it. I don't know if it'll ever actually be 3 years, but
do you think that we will have players getting bought out of contracts?
I think players will have to buy out of contracts. And schools buying them out. Yeah, it could go.
Teams will buy them out.
Yeah. You'll see it. Yeah.
Okay. Real simple. This is the sort of big, the big way that we approach a lot of news stories. So I at least wanted to put it into language here on the podcast. If for those of you who have not been able to pick up the positives and negatives along the way, Tom, winners and losers, who stands out a winner or a loser on either side in terms of the House settlement?
The schools are huge winners.
Schools are winners. Lawyers are winners.
Yes. Billable hours undefeated.
That's really it. As
Good
far
players
as I can tell right now. Yeah, because as we discussed, your salary is kind of getting capped a little bit.
Yeah.
So
you're kind of like crappier players are winners. Your good players are losers.
Can we argue that like big time boosters like that we've seen, the old school booster are kind of a loser here? Because maybe now they won't have the same kind of influence that they're used to having.
Yes.
So like Buddy Garrity's a loser in this whole thing.
The Nevin Shapiro ain't happening in this era.
That's a damn shame because that's content.
Obviously. But yeah, the super booster who can come in and change everything with a snap of their fingers, that individual does not have as much power when the school itself is providing $15 to $17 million of the payroll. And then you're just going to your collective, which is already several years into existence, kind of got things buttoned up. We've seen a lot of schools be able to, at one point, have multiple collectives. Now they've got them all, working together and working with the university. This thing went, it was not approved. It was delayed. It was pushed back. The judge said this, they had to fix that. What did we hear? We heard from athletic departments across the country. They're like, look, we're ready. Our expectation is that this is going to go through. And on July 1, we've got it in the budget. We're preparing for this. So I think that I think the ability for an individual booster to come in and gain power with their checkbook, I don't think that's crazy, Tom. I think that they're definitely a loser, at least in terms of their power over the program. No more Ponzi scheme boosters. Hate to see it.
Are smaller G5s losers? Because even though they don't have to opt in, doesn't that kind of hurt them? It's going to be even harder to kind of not only just get players, but to keep them.
I think that all of G5 is a loser here. I think that anytime that we've got this huge influx of cash to the system, it's gonna benefit the teams that are the best at spending it and organized and ready to go. You've got $2.5 million for athletes. Everybody gets not 2.5. You got $20.5 million for athletes. Everybody gets the same $20.5 million for athletes. But some of these athletic departments have also had tons and tons of money invested in their personnel department, in their scouting department, in the ability to be able to work these systems. Some of these other schools are now having to figure out ways to cut some of the jobs. Like, that's one thing that stands out to me. Everyone talks about sports getting cut. I don't think that's the case.
Some sports could be cut.
I think some sports could get cut.
Yeah.
But
I think it's going to be the expenses that are cut. Like, congratulations. Like, now you are on a 6-hour bus. Or like, hey, we did have 5 people to do this job. Now we have 3 people to do this job. I think that at some athletic departments, the decision to opt into $20.5 million is not going to necessarily mean that all of these non-revenue sports are now in danger of getting cut. But you know what is in danger? Their experience. Like, their meal table. I mean, you really think that you're going to get the Chip Kelly $1 million meal table at a Group of 5 program in the House era when that money needs to be going to athletes? So I kind of push back on this is a Chicken Little, world is falling for everybody but the revenue sports at the smaller schools. But I do think the experience of playing on those non-revenue sports is definitely in jeopardy because of the way that finances are being allocated.
Agreed. You don't think there'll be any sports cut?
I didn't say that. I think that is a really easy. Sports get cut all the time, bud.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you get kicks down to club, you get added. I mean, at these schools that have 21, 22, 23 sponsored sports, it's a constant evaluation.
There's just not much like that. Why do we need some of these Olympic sports to like fly all over the country to play each other?
We don't. That's now we're going to get off topic here, but I do think that is another change that probably should be made, in that conference realignment should probably just be for football and basketball and baseball.
Yeah.
Like all the other sports should probably just have regional conferences.
Would love that. And look, some of the conferences have adjusted the way they set up their conference schedule with not even going to, I mean, shoot, in college basketball this year, we're going to have major conferences where you don't play everybody.
Woohoo.
That's crazy. But yes, let's see. Jerry in the chat, does the NIL bucket? Yes, that is, again, but I know it feels like we have to keep reinforcing this, but it is a little bit hard.
This is good. It's new for a lot of people. You know?
So it's like NIL is separate from this $20.5 million. So if you had the money before, you'll have to get it. See,
revenue sharing, NIL.
Which one's the coffee? Which one's the water?
This is the coffee. This is the water.
All right, good. Cheers. All right, I've got Rich Get Richer, College Sports Commission. We are awaiting the appointment of a CEO, though the College Sports Commission is generally going to be powered by the power conferences. Everyone else lives in the world of the CSC, and the CSC is powered by the same people that run the CFP. CSC, CFP, it's all the same. It is literally the same people who are going to be in charge of all of them. NCAA will still have a focus on eligibility, academics, and organizing competition. Of course, much of that happening outside of the revenue sports. Okay, what's next? Let's start immediate future. Is anything going to change for 2025?
No. Like no, I don't think anything that you will actually notice on the field.
We might find out salaries. I mean, that might be the only real difference. But even then, I don't know that we will. I don't think this impacts anything really for 2025.
I think it did impact the spring portal window, but that's already come and gone.
Yeah.
At this point,
if we get salaries, I bet you we only get the ones that are coming from the school and not the actual NIL stuff.
100%.
So we were like, oh, he makes this and he makes like 1 penny less. Basically, there's probably going to be a going rate within the context of the actual money paid by the school. And then we're all left to guess at what they're actually getting in NIL outside the school.
Did you hear Sark talk about Quinn Ewers NIL?
No.
So
I've heard tell of it.
According to Sark, as I understand it, he said that Quinn Ewers was not a part of the collective pool. That like the money that the collective had together to be able to pay for the roster, Quinn Ewers instead was able to go get that EA money. Quinn Ewers signed a deal through his own representation team for Dr. Pepper. And so like these big national marketing deals were all stuff that were done outside of the collective environment. I mean, there are not many college athletes, period. You know, I think about Cooper Flagg and the AT&T marketing campaign. We're not going to get a lot of those, but I think that those deals are not going to be public. When we do have those figures that are able to get those big national campaigns, we assume it's going to be really, really big money, but I don't think that's going to be a number that we see. We would only see the number that they get from whatever the school issued salary is going to be. All right, what about next 3 years?
I think you could see slightly fewer transfers. I'm interested to see how they structure these deals. Are they able to do them in a way that is like a multi-year thing to where they actually hold the players' rights more so than they do now? That'll be something to monitor. How do schools utilize the roster spots that they have now, right? Like, is any school actually interested in having like serious depth along those roster spots? I think that's an area of, potential inefficiency, maybe in either direction, right? Maybe you take a lot of flyers on guys and just see who hits once they get on campus, or maybe you don't. Maybe you just spend up and you fill those, those remaining spots on the 105 with, guys who aren't great. Eligibility limits will certainly be something we have to take a look at. I just saw that in the chat there. Obviously, like, can Diego Pavia play football in perpetuity? Because graduating, like, he's not a guy who can play in the NFL. So it does impact his ability to earn a living with NIL, which is a statement I think would have sounded absolutely crazy 5 years ago, and still sounds crazy to say to me right now, but a little bit less so given all the stuff going on, with college sports. There are a lot of stuff we had to watch for. Do they end up having to split football off? Like, you get this in front of the right or the wrong judge, depending on your your politics. Maybe they decide that Title IX really does impact this, or that it doesn't impact this. If so, maybe you got to split football off from that. This equal pay or not, or maybe football and basketball deserve even more if you look at the numbers. So there's a lot of stuff. It's going to be lawsuits. We're probably not going to stop doing billable hours here in the near future.
I've got nothing to add to that.
Sorry.
I mean,
it's kind of got rolling.
I just feel like this. I think 3 years might be kind of too short of an estimate of things. Like, I think that we're going to spend the next 3 to 5 years still figuring this out.
Right.
And then the next thing will be player, unionization, employee status.
Collective bargaining.
And that's when the eligibility and all that kind of stuff, I think, would truly come into play.
Then we could
just minor league football.
Yeah, then we could get to OTAs. Then we could get to how many spring practices we have. Then we could get to the transfer portal, free
all
agency.
the real exciting stuff.
Yeah, all the really exciting stuff. All right.
Like, when will Aaron Rodgers finally sign? Just like that kind of stuff.
He did, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. We're all very happy. Thank you, Aaron.
It was a ringing endorsement, of the Pittsburgh Steelers. All right, let's take some questions from the tailgate. This is before we got started. Jerry B, as someone who likes legal stuff and can't wait to see the fight over the definition of fair market value. Fair market value for different fan bases and market sizes will be different for the same player on different teams. He followed it up. Carson Beck's fair market value at Miami is different than Carson Beck's fair market value at Georgia, but how would you quantify that?
That's a really good question for this new group.
For NIL Go Plus.
Yeah.
But it's like, you ain't paying me to figure that out.
Now, look, you would like look at relevant market factors, almost like
housing prices,
right? Like you'd get like an appraisal of a house, right?
Right.
Okay, what are they selling for around here? What was the square footage on Carson Beck? Does he have any upgrades, any downgrades? Obviously, the elbow maybe a little downgrade. What was the work like on that elbow? Like, what are we looking at here? Is the face looking good? All that kind of stuff. For the marketing value, of course, right? So I think you're just going to have to look and say, okay, is this comparable to what other influencers get in this market? The problem is, I think in some cases, like, there's a real lack of data. How many non-Georgia football related influencers are there in Athens? Probably not many.
I mean, music scene's pretty good, but
that's fair. Sure.
I see
Tuscaloosa, right? We're not a great music scene.
Right.
They'll be able to. They will try, obviously, because that is their job. I don't know how accurate it's going to be. That means it's probably open for some challenges.
I think, Chip, during the season, you should write like a FMV power ratings, and you could just rate players based on their NIL attractiveness.
That's such a good idea.
You're welcome.
Do you think people would get it?
No, that's the best part.
I know.
It's the same thing with my quarterback power rankings. There's really nothing behind them, but people get really upset about them.
Right. And if you didn't play the previous week, you can't be in the power rankings.
Or you lost, yeah.
Yeah, or you lost. Yeah. So then all of a sudden, you're not in the power rankings.
Mm-hmm.
Tom, you idiot.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So the fair market value power rankings would allow us to be able to, like, Jaden Maeva goes through the roof after a 3-touchdown performance.
Yeah, or he gets like a new girlfriend and she's hot. And she's got 300,000 Instagram followers. That's going to bump him up.
There was the USC football program had a little bit of a soiree recently. I saw Rob Ryan walking the red carpet. Got really happy thinking about Coach Rob Ryan again. It's gonna be a good season. Good season. All right, coming up on the other side, a few last sort of house-related questions, a little bit of recruiting, and as promised, we will address one of the biggest on-field news stories of the last couple days. All that and more.
Next.
Get ready.
Wait a second. I thought we were going tubing.
All 3 Sonic the Hedgehog movies and Knuckles are now streaming on Paramount Plus.
And everyone loves it.
Every adventure.
Just try to keep up.
Every face-off.
This ends now.
And every moment that will have you saying,
Where have you been? My entire life!
It's showtime!
All 3 Sonic the Hedgehog movies and the entire Sonic universe are now streaming on Paramount Plus.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. The tailgate's loving the idea of a fair market value power rankings, which will include, it appears, a very heavy dose of me tracking who quarterbacks are romantically involved with.
Mm-hmm.
This like I've seen the way Bill Belichick is covered in the last 3 months, so I don't understand why I would be doing
Some
everything.
outlets are running like multiple investigative reports on somebody's girlfriend these days.
Yeah. So Grant says, let's get fair market value in EA College Football 27. It's a great idea, Grant.
You got to take your creative player and try to get like more like followers on social media. Like you do like doing backflips during the game or something.
All right, we're deep in this enough, unfortunately, with a large audience as we're watching live. But so you've got to take your creative player to the bar, right? And you've got to be able, as the night continues, to be able to have the right answer when she says, "What's my name?" It's 1:45 a.m.
You know what the answer to that question is?
What's my name? Beautiful.
I don't care.
Lovely. Stephanie Alley. All right. Corey, he said, I like this whole paying players thing. Pitt just had its best recruiting weekend since Wanstedt was roaming the sidelines with wooden crutches. Great call there. And he's not the only one. Nate says Pitt's recruiting weekend was wild. House settlement comes out, and all of a sudden we are a powerhouse. LOL, I kid. This is the beginning of June, which is the big recruiting month. So, but I don't know if Pitt's weekend made its success. I will say that when I saw those comments and you sort of did some of my cursory work, it was more in the line of, well, given Pat Narduzzi, this Pitt program, like I would hope that you're attacking the month of June hard and you're able to come out with some really big headlines and some positive headlines. So not a huge surprise here, but did any of that or any of the recruiting news from the beginning of June stand out to you?
Yeah, so Florida's pretty hot on the trail, but Pitt landed 10 commitments in one weekend. I was reading about this on Panther Lair, our great 24/7 sports site. I don't know, I don't think that summer school is out yet, but that was a fun one. Chris Peak, joined the network.
Chris does an awesome job.
Yeah, dude,
it's a lot of fun.
Chris kills it. One of the few sites. Never mind. Like one of the few sites in a different network that I definitely would read still. I just thought he did such a good job. I try to find the best information wherever I could find it. So I'm really happy we got Chris on board. But 10 commitments is a big deal for them. Do I think that's actually tied to House? Not really, but that is pretty cool. For Pitt there. A lot of the like the fantasy community this weekend was up in arms with the whole Evan Stewart stuff coming out, which was that was troubling.
Yeah, that's and that was the next thing we were going to get to. You might have seen Dan Lanning promoted here. That has nothing to do with paying players. That is more a tie to Oregon's hopes of competing for the Big Ten championship again this season, because their top wide receiver going into the year is going to miss the entire season after suffering a knee injury. Evan Stewart has, ever since he was a high school prospect, always been viewed as very special, very talented. He ends up transferring out of Texas A&M. He lands at Oregon, and during Oregon's Big Ten title run, we really got to see some flashes. And he had to, a little bit more put on his plate as they suffered injuries in that position, but he was expected to be very much a big part of that Dante Moore-led Ducks offense. But what do we make of the injury and sort of how that changes any outlook? I mean, I know a single wide receiver is not going to adjust the power rating in a major way, but man, a player of that talent does change the way that offense can impose some threats to the defense.
I mean, I think that changes them quite a bit. Wow. Honestly, like they're going to need DeCorian Moore to be like a Ryan Williams type for them. And I think he has the potential to be that guy. Like DeCorian is really, really good. But I mean, they took a shot on Malik Benson. I don't think Malik Benson was going to play for them all that much, but he might have to a little more now. Right. Like, and I think if you're using him in a very, very specific limited role, maybe that makes some sense. But like, well, what if he has to go do more? That probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Much like last year, Georgia with Arian Smith. That's kind of how I'd comp this, right? If you had to throw in the ball in a bunch of different routes, where he's going to have to make contested catches, run roll routes, that's going to be a problem for Malik Benson. He really can't do that, or at least at Bama and at FSU, really couldn't. Jerry Dickey, can he ever get healthy? Maybe Gary Bryant Jr. could be a guy, for them. Maybe Justice Lowe. They needed Evan Stewart to be a big guy, and I do think this limits Oregon's ceiling some now. They're minus 265 to make the playoff at FanDuel. I don't know that that is really maybe it is justified, but that's a lot of new at receiver now.
I'm not going to minimize the impact of the injury because it is a big deal for what you're expecting to go in. This was a guy who's your ex receiver. You're expecting to be your number one receiver on the season. But if coming out of high school, Evan Stewart was the number 6 player in his class, correct?
Yeah.
He was eligible to go to the NFL after this season. He didn't. And the reason he didn't go to the NFL is because for his college career, he has been wildly inconsistent. Like if you go through his game log last year, he had the huge game against Boise, the huge game against Ohio State, a big game against Purdue, but come on. And then he had a big game against Wisconsin. Every other game was kind of non-existent. He didn't catch a pass in the Big Ten championship, didn't play against Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. So
before November, you're running behind Tez, who was having a monster year.
But that's my point. Yeah. I just think that talent-wise, the talent is there. I just don't think the production is ever quite matched what the talent says. So I don't want to dismiss it, but I don't know if it's a huge blow just based on name. I think if you look at Oregon's offense, I think they were probably going to be heavier into run this year anyway. They got Makai Hughes from Tulane. I think this impacts their ability to stretch the field a bit if they even try. But we've seen that passing game has been a lot of bubble screens and short throws and yak over the last few years, and I think you're still going to be able to see plenty of that. So I think Evan Stewart, you're correct. It impacts their ceiling. Like I don't know if Oregon can win a national title this year. I don't know if I thought Oregon was going to win the national title before the Evan Stewart injury. I do think floor-wise, you don't need a stud at the X spot in that offense to be a valuable offense. I think that as long as you have good shifty guys and guys who can do work underneath, you'll still be fine for the most part. Maybe it impacts your ability to win the Big Ten. But I still think this team is going to be capable of getting to the playoff with them because I think the strength of this team, as we've discussed in the offseason, like we were looking at the defense as what was going to be the strength of this Oregon unit. Like none of us, I don't think, had super high expectations for what the offense was going to look like. So it sucks and it complicates things and it leaves them less margin for error because they do lack experience now at a lot of spots at the receiver position. But I think in the long run, they're going to be mostly fine.
Gary Bryant, kind of a he's still in the league type guy right there. Somebody we've been around. He's a good player. And Gary Bryant makes a good play. You're like, oh yeah, what's up, Gary Bryant? How we doing? I mean, Gary Bryant Jr. is more like Gary Bryant IV at this point. He's on his like 4th or 5th year of college football at the wide receiver position after being an impact. Wasn't he in the same freshman class as Zach Branch at USC? Or was he even the class before that?
He's a redshirt senior. So
yeah, 5th year.
Yeah.
So he's older than Branch, but DeCorian Moore is the big topic for me, like that you just mentioned. Moore got a lot of praise coming out of spring practice. There is a lot of excitement around Eugene that he could be special. I think you would have rather had it in doses rather than really throwing him out there and really needing him. I think that's kind of where that offense is at. Additionally, probably an impact for one of my favorite storylines in the Big Ten this year. Just what if Dante Moore is that dude? What if? Yeah. Is it crazy? Is it crazy to think like Dante Moore comes out and plays as one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten?
It's not insane.
It's not crazy because I think the bar. Like, I think we have a lot of really good established quarterbacks in the Big Ten, but we don't have a lot of guys who are established as like top of the draft type guys.
Right.
So if he plays to we're throwing out kind of random, like nebulous numbers here, but if he plays to like his 90th percentile, given the talent that we saw him have in high school, like, sure.
Yeah.
That puts him close to the top of the Big Ten.
That is a way that you can make up for this. Tailgate's going crazy. Like, guys, we know Kenyon Sadiq's awesome. Okay, that's that's like a given in the middle of this Oregon offense. He is athleticism through the roof. He will be a big part of this for sure. But I think that on the perimeters, Oregon has the athleticism and the speed to really be able to test people. And that's something that I think is going to be really important. And that sort of take the top off the defense that you lose from Evan Stewart is definitely a piece of that. All right. So Carson, Evan Stewart injury. We got you. How about this one? Matthew. I know this isn't a mailbag episode, but why hasn't there been any talk about a 9+7 model for the 16-team playoff, giving all conference champs a shot? Because the people who run the college football playoff aren't interested in giving every conference champion a shot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, like,
why doesn't the government just not make us pay taxes?
Those games would suck.
Yeah.
Okay. Or at least the vast majority of them would. I mean, you're looking at the all conference teams of these, like Sun Belt or wherever, like 80 or 90% of these players are, and sometimes more, are leaving for the Power Four at the end of the season. Which, granted, you could tell me, hey, well, that those guys are actually on the rosters come playoff time, and that's true. But like, if you look at some of the teams these guys leave for, they're not all going to like a Michigan or an Alabama. Like some of them are going to kind of lower level stuff. Like the quality, like the gap in the quality of player is fairly deep.
That's like, hey, you're going to be Virginia Tech's new starting wide receiver.
Right. Yeah.
Shout out to Jalen Lane. Am I pulling that? He's in the NFL now.
That is correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a
former Hokie.
A former Hokie and Georgia State, somewhere in the Sun Belt.
Yeah.
I think that there's I think that if you're looking at why the 5+11 model is getting more traction from the Southeastern Conference, it's because they believe that they could have 7 or 8 teams in a 5+11 model.
Yeah.
Why in the world would they be giving those spots to the conference champions from 5 other conferences?
The SEC might not mind them 9+7 because then they would get what, like 15 teams in there.
Look, also we've never ever had this argument. Like when we had the BCS, it wasn't like, hey, why don't we have a 30-team BCS, right? When you had the old like Bowl Alliance, you weren't having these G5 teams get a real crack at winning the national title. Like we've always known this. It's just a little more codified now. Like those teams don't have the same type of player. Like most of those guys are literally going to go and get a job like the rest of us. And, you know, like the guys playing in the playoff, most of those dudes will probably make the NFL.
Just participation trophy ass playoff.
Hey, listen, my Oregon is still my national champion. Okay. Number 1 at the end of the regular season, number 1 in my heart. Go Ducks. It's all right. You'll get past Evan Stewart. DK Moore will be the man. All right.
Also, Malik Benson could probably fill that role a little bit.
I would hope so.
I mean, he was like a track guy out of high school, right? He can run verts, just he can clear out a safety every once in a while, right? Like he's good for that, isn't he?
But he's you just these journeymen at this point, maybe I'm getting older, but these journeymen, they land and it just goes to, man, I hope he gets it together. I hope that young man can capitalize and, you know, finish his college career on a high note.
I think at the very least he's getting a quarterback upgrade this year.
Yes. In terms of throwing the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would undoubtedly agree with that. All right. Wednesday, we are really starting to dig in on getting you ready for the preseason machine. That's right. Before we get into our win totals and before we start to do our team by team breakdowns, we need to start to look at some things like strength of schedule, because very few things are more important to your win totals analysis than understanding who's got the hard draws, who's got the easy draws. So coming up on Wednesday, among other things that we'll be discussing here on the Cover 3 podcast, we will be breaking down some of the toughest and easiest schedules in college football. Mailbag then coming up on Thursday at the end of the week. Next week, we will also be taking a look at dark horses, blue chip ratio coming up before the end of the month. And then in July, Yes, that's right. Media days, win totals, preseason picks. Boom. Season will be here before you know it. We are fired up to be off and rolling. And you can follow him on Twitter at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow him at Tom Fornelli. You can follow me at Chip _Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See y'all.